can see me. Hi everyone, it's Natasha here from the Nextwork team. I'm so excited to be doing another project with you today, and I hope everyone's having a good time. How are you? What time is it over there? And where are you based right now? It's been a while since we've done another project live with you, so I'm feeling so excited because another reason to be excited is that this is a revamp of a very popular DevOps series with the Nextwork community. In this project series, we are building something called a CI/CD pipeline, and if you've done the first version of this series with us, you'll know that it's about 7 projects long, and each project is just packed full of learning, full of fun stuff, full of just like really interactive things that is very practical in the real world. Now, for context, if you're wondering, oh, so there was a previous version of this project, what's happened? Well, the very first 2 services that we use in that CI/CD pipeline series, they were discontinued by AWS. So those services were called Cloud9 and Code Commit. And what happened was AWS pretty much closed the doors for these services to new users, which meant that if you wanted to start that project today, it would probably be very hard to finish the first 2, let alone complete the entire series. So finally, we're here with a revamped version of the entire series, starting with the very first project, which is this one that you're watching right now. So this first one is called setting up a web app in the cloud, and we are kicking off, our DevOps CI/CD series with this project. Now, a big shout out to 2 people in the chat already. One is called Fruit. We'll call you Fruit, saying let's go, and Anki saying hey Natasha, saying hi back to the both of you. Welcome. Well, now that we're here, let's talk about what you're actually going to build over the 7 projects in this CI/CD pipeline series. And heads up, if you have no clue what CI/CD pipelines mean, if you're a bit like, oh, what are we actually doing in this DevOps series? We're gonna go through everything from the beginning together, so no experience required at all. A big shout out to King of Zamunda as well for saying, hola Nat, good to see you. It's so good to see you too. All right, so in this DevOps series, we are going to be building a CI/CD pipeline, and you can see that there are just a lot of services happening here right now, all the way starting from you as an IAM user, this is pretty much you, ending all the way here with a web app on the other side, or an EC2 instance acting as a web app, acting as a host server for your web app. So a CI/CD pipeline is something that is a very key concept in DevOps. And if you don't know what DevOps means, that's okay. DevOps is basically the combination of development and operations. And what DevOps engineers do is they make development and operations, development being like actually coding and creating your code, and operations being more like releasing the code, maintaining the code, making sure that things are getting pushed out to users in the most efficient way possible, combining those 2 and integrating them very tightly so that software can get released even faster to users and less errors can be made, or errors can be caught even earlier in the process of releasing software. There's a lot that goes into DevOps. That was a very I would say high-level kind of introduction. So if you know DevOps very well, you're probably thinking, oh, that's just the surface, that's just the start of things. I totally agree, but I feel like the really key thing to know about DevOps is it just helps with making sure that software gets released to people in a more efficient way, and in a more secure way, as well as in a way that incurs like even less errors. A big shout out to everyone in the chat. Mahad says hello. Duke Narain says hi Natasha. Hi Duke. I think it's our first time meeting. Benedict says yay. Benedict, so good to see you, and thanks so much for all the good vibes in the event page. I remember you mentioned that you've been waiting for this one, so I'm glad that we're here now. And Find the Function is giving us a wave. Hello back, Find the Function. So let's dive into a little bit more from a little bit more on CI/CD. So we've just talked about how DevOps really closes the gap between like development and also operations. And CI/CD is so useful as a tool because it's about automating those steps. So it's automating the steps that takes code that's been created by developers into the hands of users in a very fast way. And in the first project of this series, we're going to be building a basic web app using AWS and another tool called VSCode. This will lay the foundation for the DevOps work for the rest of this series. So to clarify, what we're creating in this project today is like the very start of this pipeline. So you can see the visible areas of this graph now. So boom, the IAM user, that's you, the index.jsp file, which is like one of the files for your web app, as well as an EC2 instance that you're going to be using to develop or like store all of the development work for your web app. So we're just going to be building these three components for your CI/CD pipeline, and over the entire series, you'll be building this entire thing. Cool. So I hope that gives you a bit of context. I'm very excited for us to be working on that first part today. And what we're really going to be doing is to launch an EC2 instance, which is this cool little guy here. And then we're going to use VS Code to set up a remote SSH connection to your EC2 instance. Now, SSH and setting up a remote connection is something that we'll explain as we go. So no worries at all if you're new to this term. And then we're going to be installing Maven and Java to generate this basic web app for you. Cool. I'm very excited for this. And I hope you are too. So again, what we're doing in this project is basically laying the foundations to set up this CI/CD pipeline later on in the series. So the CI/CD pipeline is not going to be visible from this very project, but it will become very clear to you as you keep going in the DevOps series. Of course, this project standalone though is already so helpful because something like launching an EC2 instance, using VS Code, setting up a remote SSH connection. These are some very practical skills. And I've talked with our engineers and they're like, yeah, this is stuff that engineers do use all the time. And I think it's just a skill that is also very transferable even outside of AWS. So very much worthwhile learning. Cool. Thanks everyone for coming along and saying hi. We have IAM Amist. So cool to see you, saying hi, Nat. We have Tushar saying hi, Nat. Masola, Kemi, good to see you, saying hello, everybody. Erwin's here. Wow, Erwin, it's been a long time. It's so good to see you. We also have Uday. Wow, welcome back, saying hello, Natasha. All right, that gives me so much energy. So let's jump into it by answering the first question. That's just about what are we here to do today? And what are we here to do today? We're just going to break down this project topic into a few sentences. So in this project, we are going to set up a web app in the cloud using AWS and VS Code. This work lays the foundation for our DevOps, or really, in brackets, CI/CD pipeline series. Cool, press done. And I'm loving to hear everyone saying hi. I find that so sweet. Let me ask everyone in the chat another question. What was the last meal that you've had today? For me, my last meal was a Subway. I had a really nice Subway right before starting this live. I'm wondering what everyone had as their last meal. And we also have Jerome saying hi back. Iman saying hi, Natasha, it's me, Iman. Finally, Devil's Project is back. It sure is. And a big shout out to Iman as well for being a huge support in the community, helping all the students who have been stuck with the first version of this project and helping them get unstuck. Cool. So if you want documentation for this project, and the documentation is going to look awesome, by the way, if you want that, please fill out all the tasks in this project. So you got to just fill out all of these questions, and it will get generated automatically for you. You'll see this come into action at the end of this live. And yeah, if you noticed, you might have noticed, whoa, did this text just get highlighted when Nat was, scrolling over it? Yeah. So we have a new feature where you can, highlight something with your scroll bar, or is this called your cursor? You can highlight something with your cursor and it will highlight automatically as well. And you can even pick the color that you like. So once you highlight it with your cursor, you can click on this highlight button, and then you can even choose a color that you like to highlight it in. Let us know what you think about this feature. Have you used it yourself ever since we released it just a few days ago? Would love to know what you think about it. Okay, so like every other classic AWS project, you will need to start by setting up an IAM user for yourself. Now, we're not actually going to run through how to set up this IAM user in today's project because we've set it up in many other project live demos before. And I've already linked in the description box in this video on how you can set one up for yourself. That link is going to take you to another video demo, so no worries at all if you like video demos and you're like, oh, but I want to watch it in a video. I promise you the link that I've included in the description is also a video step-by-step guide on how you can set up that IAM user. So I hope that is useful for you. But in the meantime, we are actually not going to be doing step 1 since we've done it before in the other project demos, so we can go straight into the juicy parts of this project, which is to start by launching our EC2 instance. So I'm going to scroll through all of this here, but this is like the exact steps that you'll need to do to set up an IAM user. Please make sure you log in to your IAM admin user instead of the root user, so instead of the default AWS account that you have. And that's because the IAM user is going to be crucial for you to not just protect your account for account security, but also there are some features, very ironically, that the root user does not have access to later on in this series, that only the IAM admin user can have. And that's because they've kind of just, the permissions have been disabled by default just out of protection for your root user. But that means if you don't have the practice of creating an IAM admin user and signing in with that, you might get stuck later on in this project. You can't say I haven't warned you now, okay? And yeah, we've had people saying, Abang saying, I've done 2 projects. Ooh, awesome, great for newbies, and I learned a new thing in each session. That's awesome. Thank you so much for being here too, Abang. Erwin says, my last meal was chocolate and tea. That sounds nice. What kind of chocolate? Is it dark chocolate with like a peppermint tea? Or is it like a white chocolate with a black tea? Find the function had dumplings. I am amiss had noodles. Ooh, very nice. What kind of noodles? Is it ramen? And is the dumplings like... Oh, dumplings sounds very good, by the way. It's like the chive dumplings. King of Zamunda had eggs on toast and a cup of coffee. That is an iconic breakfast. That sounds delicious. Mariana says hi. Say hi back, Mariana. Okay, so once you've created your IAM admin user and you've signed in, what we're going to do first is we're going to launch an EC2 instance. So launching an EC2 instance is going to be our first step here because our web app is going to be something that users can interact with, right? So if you've gone into any websites, like let's look at the AWS Management Console. Technically, I could access this from my browser. This is something that I could access just by typing something into my browser and I hit enter. Now, where were the files that created this entire web app that I can just access by hitting enter? Well, the files that helped with creating this web app, setting it up, designing creating the interface so that I have like something visual to look at when I load this page, all of those files are currently sitting somewhere in this virtual server that's like not downloaded into my computer, thank goodness, so it saves me a lot of space. But the files that created this website, the AWS Management Console, is being hosted somewhere far away from me. And that place that it's being hosted in is a virtual server or an EC2 instance. So EC2 instances, we're going to go into what they mean, but think of it for now as the home for your web apps files. because we want your web app to be entirely created and run on the cloud, we're here to create a cloud-based web app here. We want the web app to be accessible, the web app files to be accessible from anywhere in the world. So let's set up something called an EC2 instance to house the web app's files. You might find the EC2 instance to be quite like a tricky concept to learn first up, but I promise you that the more you interact with EC2 instances, the more you'll be like, oh, I definitely get it. I definitely get what it means. If there's anyone watching this right now that's had this experience of like launching multiple EC2 instances, please give me some validation in the chat, or encourage the beginners in the chat as well. Let them know like that this is something that you will eventually become more and more confident in. But yeah, in this early step, we're going to launch that EC2 instance. We're going to set up something called a key pair for secure access to that instance. And then we're going to set up the network settings for your instance. All right, so in this step, we are setting up an EC2 instance, which will become the home for our web apps files. We are using an EC2 instance because we want our web app to be entirely cloud-based. Cool. Okay. Let's submit that now. And if the font is a bit too small, by the way, please let me know, and I can try increase the font size on this page. So we're in the management console, and this is where we're going to launch our EC2 instance. You're going to just click on that search bar here. Oh, and it looks like I can't seem to click into the search bar here. Oh, I can now. And then we're going to type in EC2 so that we can find the EC2 service. Hi to everyone in the chat, by the way. TechNet says hello all. JDeep says hey. All right, so once we're here in the EC2 console, we're going to click on that beautiful orange button that says launch instance, and then we're just about to get started with launching an instance. So if you're still wondering, what is an EC2 instance? In short, these EC2 instances are like being able to rent and use virtual computers that live on the cloud. So EC2 instances, you can think of it as a computer that you have access to, but that physical computer, like that, its physical body is somewhere else in the world, so you can't physically touch this computer, but its abilities to work and its abilities to process things for you is accessible, and it's something that you can use right away. It's so helpful because now you have access to computing power without needing to buy physical computers or without needing to store physical servers in front of you on hand. And you can create and customize and use these computers for all different reasons. Running applications, hosting websites. In this case, we're setting up a web app. And that's definitely a huge use case for using virtual servers too. And if you're wondering, EC2 means Elastic Compute Cloud. And the three words basically stands for elastic means flexible. So EC2 instances are known for being very flexible because they can adapt and change in size and power to fit whatever you need it to do. Compute means computing power. And computing power means its ability to do tasks for you. So for example, being able to run an app on your computer requires computing power. Being able to download something into your computer requires computing power. Doing things on your computer in general requires computing power. And cloud means that you now have access to that computing power just over the internet without needing to go to the store, buy a computer, have it in front of you to access more computing power. You can just use the existing computer right in front of you, right here, and still access computing power that's like the equivalent of buying another computer and having that next to you. So I hope that's clear. And in the meantime, what we're going to do is we're going to switch our regions and make sure that it's the region that's close to you. So the region is basically something that you can find on the top corner here in your AWS Management Console, and just make sure you're picking the one that's closest to you. I'm going to go for US West, Oregon for now. And perfect. Now we're gonna go back to launching our very first EC2 instance. And as I launched that EC2 instance, just know that an instance is kind of like one computer. You can think of it in that way. So EC2 is this service that creates virtual computers for you. And every instance is like every computer that you create with the power of EC2. So why are you launching an EC2 instance? I started this project by launching an EC2 instance because it will be used to house my web apps files. Without launching an EC2 instance first, I would not have a location for setting up my web app for the rest of this project. Cool. We'll just click done. And a shout out to King of Zamunda as well for mentioning something very important. EC2 is an IaaS as well. Can anyone in the chat know or explain what IaaS stands for? That's your second challenge. So let's set up the EC2 instance by first giving it a name. We're going to call it Nextwork DevOps your name. Make sure to change your name to your actual name, but we're going to keep this demo generic for now. So we're going to keep it as the boring default your name. But yeah, spice this up for yourself. And for the AMI, we're going to click Amazon Linux 2023 AMI. It should be the default, but if it's not, make sure you switch it to 2023 AMI. And make sure that you are choosing an instance type that is called t2.micro. So AMI and choosing t2.micro it basically means that we're setting up our computer. Just like how you might walk into a store and you can say, oh, I want a Linux computer today, or I want a Windows computer, or I want a, what's something else? I want something that is Windows or Mac. Choosing an AMI is kind of like that. You're kind of like choosing the operating system for you. You're kind of choosing the type of computer for you. And the moment you are selecting the instance type, you're kind of like customizing the type of computer that you've chosen. So what that means is you have, for example, you're like, okay, you want a MacBook. Sure, here's your MacBook. Do you want the one with this specific chip or this specific chip? Do you want this much memory? Do you want this much space? How do you want to customize your computer that you've chosen? So choosing an instance type is basically the equivalent of that. You're just setting up that computer. And you can see T2.micro is a great choice because it's free tier eligible, which means it keeps your project free. Please make sure you pick an option that's free tier eligible to you. Now, we've chosen what kind of computer we want. And now we're going to choose something that's called a key pair. Now, a key pair is kind of like having your own password or your own credentials for logging into this computer. And here we're setting up a key pair so that we can later on securely access this EC2 instance that's somewhere in the cloud. We can somehow from our computer still connect to a random computer in the cloud because we have the right credentials for it. Otherwise, if we don't have a key pair, the way that we're going to securely connect to our EC2 instance, it wouldn't be possible because that secure connection that gets set up, it's going to ask, who do you want to connect with and do you have the right credentials or the right password for it? We could still find where that EC2 instance is, but we would not be able to provide our credentials for it if we don't set up a key pair now. So setting up a key pair is something that we're going to do to make sure we have the right, so to make sure that we can actually access this EC2 instance that we're setting up now. Cool. So we're going to click on create key pair. Yeah. And then we're going to give it a name. All right. So the name is called Nextwork key pair, like this. We're going to keep all of these as the default values, and we're going to create that key pair right away. And as I click create key pair, I'm going to make sure my browser is set up for it. Watch out for something that gets downloaded. Okay, boom. Did you see that? So we just downloaded something that's called nextworkkeypair.pem. Oh, interesting. What just got downloaded over there? And I'm sure when you press create key pair, you're gonna see the same thing as well in front of you. Does anyone know what a key pair is? You know, what does a key pair do? So good to see I am Amist and Erwin already answering the previous question about infrastructure as a service. Nice on Erwin. And I'm now curious, does anyone know what a key pair does? All right. So a key pair, like I mentioned, is the credentials for it. But when we think about it technically, it's made of two halves. That's why it's called a key pair. So a public key is one half of that pair, and there's also something called a private key that's the other half of that pair. So one half of that pair, that public key, is something that AWS keeps, and then the private key is something that we just downloaded here, the Nextware key pair.pem file. So when you use your private key, there's going to be something that says, does your private key matches up with the public key that AWS has kept for your EC2 instance? If it matches, congratulations, you've unlocked the EC2 instance, you can access it. But let's say you have a private key, but it doesn't actually match the public key that's been kept for your EC2 instance, then you won't be able to get access to that EC2 instance. So that's kind of technically how a key pair works. It's made out of two halves. They need to kind of like meet up, kind of shake hands a little, agree with each other a little, and that's how you get access to an EC2 instance that you host in the cloud. I find it really interesting, you know, because when we log into a computer, we kind of just type in a password, and then the computer just somehow like verifies that this is the correct password that you've set up ages back. And this is kind of a slightly different way to authenticate users, I guess. You're not technically typing in a password, you're kind of supplying this key that you have, and they just need to make sure that it matches up with the key that they have. Okay, cool. So we have downloaded something very cool, and we're going to organize it right now before we lose track of that file. What we're going to do is we're actually going to take a trip to our local computer, and then we are going to open up the downloads file. Okay, so we're going to open up the downloads folder, in your local computer, and you're going to see that this file is, in your downloads folder. So now that it's in your downloads folder, let us organize it into somewhere safe. We're going to organize it somewhere safe by putting it in our desktop, and putting it in your desktop will make it very easily accessible, because we're going to need to get it later in this project too. Drag your private key that you've just downloaded into your desktop. Boom. Okay. And then we're going to create a new folder for our desktop. I'm going to just create a new folder here. And I see you might not be able to actually see my desktop, but you'll be able to see the next thing very soon, I promise. Oh, maybe I can set it up here. Oh yeah, I can. So this is my computer's desktop folder, I guess, which is like the folder representation of what's actually in my desktop in the background here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new folder in my desktop, and I'm going to call it DevOps. Please name yours DevOps as well. And then drag that private key you've downloaded into the DevOps folder. Off it goes. Very nice. Now that it's here, you should have a folder called DevOps in your desktop, and then that folder inside should have a file called nextworkkeypair.pem. So make sure you have that. Once you have that set up, get ready to move on. Okay, so let us answer this question. Take a screenshot of the downloaded PEM file in your DevOps folder. Okay, let's do that. I am loving everyone's answers about the key pair, by the way. That's very, very impressive. A shout out to everyone's answers. King of Zamunda says, for the key pair we create, what is the default account that gets to be used and what are its privileges? Oh, you get to see that in a second, King of Zamunda. You get to see it very, very soon. Find a function says public or private key. Jerome says it's for authentication, like a lock and key. Erwin adds on that it's like a public key cryptography. Yeah, very much so. Like everyone's answers are spot on. And we'll move on to taking a screenshot of this DevOps folder with the private key, and we'll add that in. Blaze says, hi Tasha, you're awesome. Thank you so much, Blaze. That's so sweet. Really, really cool to see you in the community. And I'm a big fan of your work too, so thanks so much for being here. So let us answer the first question. A key pair is, shall we integrate everyone's answers in the chat? A key pair is like a lock and key for our EC2 instance. It is used to, what is someone else's answers? It is used for authentication, i.e. for us to securely connect to our EC2 instance, for us to securely get access to our EC2 instance. It works by having two halves, i.e. a private and public key that must match up. It works by having two halves, i.e. a private and a public key that must match up for you to get access. You know, something simple is all good, and I am a big fan of everyone's answers here. I wish I could have incorporated more of the responses. Maybe for the next question we can. What was a downloaded file in your local computer? Well, we can say, once I set up my key pair, AWS automatically downloaded a file called nextwork keypair.pem. This file is my private key, i.e. my half of the key pair that I will need to use to access my EC2 instance later in this project. Nice. So we're done with that answer. Very nice. And answering all these questions will contribute to the documentation that generates at the end of this project. So I'm excited to see it all come together later on. Now back into our EC2 instance setup, we're just going to head to the network settings section. So that's down here. And then we are going to make sure that we are set up in terms of the networking side for our EC2 instance. We're going to make sure that this networking setup is secure by only allowing SSH traffic from your own IP address. So you're going to click on this drop-down bar, and you're going to select My IP, this option over here. And that makes sure that only your IP address can access the EC2 instance that you're setting up. So if we're selecting anywhere, that means anyone from any kind of IP address will be able to access your EC2 instance if they have the key pair. It probably still isn't the most secure thing, even though I guess not everyone would have downloaded that PEM file that technically only you've downloaded so far. But being able to restrict traffic to just your own IP address is ideal. Very, very ideal if you know for sure that only you need to access the web app files that we're going to house in that EC2 instance. You can double check that the IP address is correct by clicking here to access a website that just simply prints out your IP address. So I know that mine is 110.173.160.6, and that perfectly matches up with what's under the My IP option. Very nice. This looks great. I think we're ready to move on. So if you're thinking, oh, what is SSH? I'm new to this term. That's completely all good. SSH is a protocol, and it's a protocol that's used to make sure only authorized users can access a remote server. So remember how we said that somehow your private key and your public key will get matched up, and it will check if they if they are the right half for each other before you can get access to an EC2 instance. Who's actually doing that matching? Who's actually joining them up and seeing if they actually match up, if that public key is for that private key? you can you can understand SSH as kind of like the party that is doing that matching for us and verifying that you have authority to access the EC2 instance. Now, the term SSH is very versatile because it's also a network traffic. So once SSH is like, okay, you pass, you can have access to the EC2 instance, SSH also becomes a type of network traffic. So it becomes a traffic type that means communication between you and your EC2 instance is encrypted, and all the data transferred also gets encrypted as well. So that's why when you say I am going to access my EC2 instance using SSH, that is considered a method of accessing an EC2 instance that's very, very secure and just great for best practice as well. Cool. So now let's understand, now that we have set up SSH traffic, we're going to take a screenshot. Oh, maybe we won't take a screenshot. I got duped. We're actually just answering a question. Okay, let's answer this question. What is SSH? Oh, I love this question. SSH is secure shell. A big shout out to Erwin in the chat for mentioning this earlier. SSH is secure shell, which is a protocol that that makes sure communication between servers connected remotely is authorized and secure, i.e. encrypted. I enabled SSH traffic from just my IP address so that I can connect to my EC2 instance later so that I can connect to my EC2 instance in the next step. Happy days. I don't have enough characters left to just write the word step. I'm always having little battles with being concise, but that's okay. SSH is secure shell, which is a protocol that makes sure communication between servers is authorized and secure. It's authorized and secure. Maybe I don't need IE encrypted. Let's be concise today. So that that means I can complete my sentence. Very nice. We're gonna hit done for that, and we're gonna move on. So when you're ready, now that you've set up your EC2 instance, your very own server in the cloud, we can launch it. Phew. Launch your instance, and it should be a success. Okay, very nice. So we see the success banner that confirms that we've made sure we have successfully created this virtual server. If you don't see a success message, if you're like, oh, wait up a second, I'm getting an error while trying to launch this EC2 instance. If you get that error, please make sure that you ask a question with the Nixer community. The link to that is right here. And we will absolutely help each other out. Yeah, this community is all about supporting each other. It's such a lovely vibe. Everyone in the chat is proof of that. All right. I think everyone is having a vibe in the chat right now. Hi, Joe, by the way. I am sorry, I'm just catching up with the chat now, and I'm seeing that everyone is giving me advice on how I can be more concise as well. Thank you so much. Benedict says, change IE to just parentheses. I will use that next time. I should have done that just now. And King of Zamuna says, an interesting question. Is there like a limit to the amount of people who can access the EC2 instance at a given time? Hindsight is these individuals have access to the key pairs and EC2 details. Wow, I don't have the answer to that, King of Zamunda. You've asked a really good question. Is there a limit to the amount of people who can access the EC2 instance at a given time? Wow, I would love to find out. I'm going to charge ahead with this project so that we don't lose track of like the next step. But if anyone in the chat would be happy to investigate for us and share their findings on whether there is a limit to the amount of people who can access an EC2 instance at a given time and share their findings? That would be fascinating. I would love to know as well. Thank you, Gingo Zamunda, for such a cool question. I love that. All right, so we're going to install VS Code in the next step. Now that your EC2 instance is up and running, okay, so let's say, why did we set up an EC2 instance? Can you remember the reason why we set that up? That was a genuine question. I really would love to know your thoughts on this. No, but if you have set up an EC2 instance, please know that what you've set up is kind of like the house for your web apps files. Later on, when you're developing your web app, those files need to live somewhere. Technically, it can't just live in your local computer. You can't just develop it using a file that you save on your local computer, because that means those web app files aren't in the cloud, okay? They're technically somewhere in a local server. But we want to make sure this entire web app development process is entirely in the cloud, so we can really understand these different tools that we can use. So we've set up this house in the cloud for our web app files. Do you know how to get access to that house? Or how to actually, now that you've set up the house, actually set up the web app inside that house? I would have a really tough time if I don't have access to the house myself. We've set up the key pair, so we have the key, but we haven't really set up a way for us to communicate with this EC2 instance that we've set up in the cloud. It's kind of like just right over there, and you want to talk to it, you want to access it, but you don't actually know how to even communicate to it yet. So what we're going to do in this step is we're going to install this tool called VSCode, and VSCode is kind of like this software that we are going to use to help us with communicating with this EC2 instance that we've launched just now. VS Code is a super versatile tool. It's not just for communicating with EC2 instances. It is capable of doing many things. But we're going to start from here. And we're going to learn a bit more about VS Code along the way. So in this step, we're going to download and install VS Code. We're going to set up something called a terminal within VS Code. We're going to explain what terminal means in a second. And then we're going to change the permissions of this .pem file using VS Code, or this tool within the VS Code. Okay, so that's what we're going to be setting up in this step. We have set up the IAM user. You would have done that in step 1. We've just set up the house for our web app files, and now we're going to set up this big area here, which is VS Code for us. Okay, so in this step, we are installing and setting up VS Code. VS Code will be an important tool for us to communicate with our EC2 instance, and later on set up the web app inside the instance. Cool. Let's go. Let's get started. So we're going to head to the Visual Studio Code website, and then we are going to choose the right version of VS Code for your device. Now, if you don't know which version to use, because you're thinking, okay, all I know is I have a Mac, but which one? Which one do I pick? No worries. It is a completely fair question to have. If you have that question, we have steps on how you can figure out which version you should pick for depending on the operating system that you're using. So if you're using Mac, if you're using Windows, if you're using Linux, Linux users, please don't come at me for calling Linux an operating system. But what you're going to do is, for example, I have a Mac, so I'm going to click on the Apple icon on the top right hand corner. I'm going to click on About This Mac, okay? And it tells me here that I'm using Apple M3. Because the chip starts with Apple, it doesn't start with Intel, that means I know that I just need to use the Apple Silicon version of Visual Studio Code. So I'm going to just click on Apple Silicon like this, and it downloads a file for me to open VS Code for me. Okay. Cool. A shout out to everyone in the chat again. Everyone's discussing that question about that limit for the number of people who can access EC2 instances. Very interesting chats. We have Praneeth saying, hello, Nat. Sorry for being late. Oh, Praneeth, nothing to apologize for. It's just good to have you here now. Joe saying, are you going to be seeing a terminal on a Mac? Don't tell me you get offended by that, Joe. I swear, me and you, like, we're going to fight on this. Yeah, a good point by Find the Function on talking about IAM protocols and also Linux for life. We have lots of dedicated, I swear people who use Linux are always so like, yeah, Linux. You know what I mean? And Find a Function, would you say you're like that kind of person too? All right, so we have in our downloads folder a zip file now. So you can find in your downloads folder a zip file for VS Code, and you might not see a zip file depending on which version of VS Code you've used, but whatever file you've downloaded, make sure you're opening it. Okay, just installing VS Code is not the same as having access to it. You do still need to manually click on it to open it and to use VS Code. And if there's any pop-up that asks you like, oh, do you trust this? Yeah, you do. Okay, VS Visual Studio Code is something that's very, very safe to download. Okay, so we're going to open that up. Exciting! And welcome to Visual Studio Code. Who here in this call, who here in this live chat right now has used Visual Studio Code before? If you have, type in a yes, type in a little cool emoji. If you have never used Visual Studio Code at all before, type that into the chat as well. I think that's awesome. We can get started with using Visual Studio Code together. All right, let's take a screenshot of the VS Code welcome page. Well, this welcome page doesn't look too exciting because I think because I've installed Visual Studio Code in the past before, it somehow remembers the files that I used. So it might not look like the welcome page that you see if you're a completely new user. But hey, that's okay. Take that screenshot anyway. Still a cool screenshot to include in your documentation. And we'll answer the first question. So what is VS Code? I am loving seeing Erwin, Jerome, King of Zamunda, Mariana, Find the Function, Joe. All of you have used Visual Studio Code before. That's awesome. I wonder how everyone would explain what is VS Code. All right, so I think we have the explanation over here that I think I actually scrolled past just now, but Visual Studio Code or VS Code really is one of the most popular tools for creating and managing coding projects. You'll often hear people call VS Code something called an IDE. Okay, if you hear the words IDE, just know that IDE means software that help you write and edit code, and IDEs often come with lots of tools that kind of supercharge your abilities to write code in a more efficient way, or in a way that's like connected to all of these interesting packages or software that helps speed up, again, the process of writing code for you. So it's similar to how you would use Microsoft Word or Google Docs to supercharge the way you write documents. Like technically, you can just open up a TXT file or a very, very simple text file and just start writing away and just create documents with it. But people don't really use that. We like to use word processors like Microsoft Word or like Google Docs. Why? Because writing becomes a bit more easy, or writing becomes a bit more powerful. You get access to different fonts, you get access to different abilities to print things or share your document with other people and collaborate on things. Like you access a lot of these very powerful writing features when you use something called like a word processor. So think of things in the same way as the reason why people would use IDEs to create code. Suddenly writing code becomes a lot simpler, a lot more powerful, and things become a lot more efficient as well, when you're using an IDE. And that's why we're going to be using Visual Studio Code today, so that you can get yourself comfy with it. Okay, so you're going to also know very soon that VS Code comes with those extra tools that we're going to use to help connect ourselves with that EC2 instance. And that connection is going to be very, very valuable. Okay, so big shout out to everyone saying, yeah, great explanation about VS Code to find a function. Editor with a massive library of extensions for different languages and users. That's an excellent definition. Yeah, it is an editor. It has a massive library of extensions. We're going to use one soon. And it works well with so many different languages and use cases. Joe also says VS Code changed my life. I used to use Notepad to build web pages. How long did that last, Joe? That is OG work. Wow. All right, let's answer the first question. VS Code is an IDE, i.e., I should use the tip that was shared to me. I remember Benedict shared a tip that says you should use parentheses to save yourself characters. VS Code is an IDE, software for editing and creating code. That we are using today so that we can easily connect to our EC2 instance and then create and edit web files on that EC2 instance. Okay? Oh, I just answered 2 questions in one. Okay, so in this question, we're really just defining what is VS Code. I jumped the gun a little bit there, and I answered this next question a bit too early. I installed VS Code to connect to our EC2 instance and then create and edit web app files on that EC2 instance. So in terms of explaining what is VS Code, how about we incorporate find the functions amazing definition in the chat. So VS Code is an IDE and is also one of the most popular tools, editors, one of the most popular editors, as it comes with a massive library of extensions and is compatible with different languages and use cases. Awesome, and a big shout out again to find the function in the chat. So quick tip, if this is your first time using VS Code, there's a cool thing you can do, which is customizing VS Code's color theme. What is everyone's favorite color theme, I wonder? But how you can access that. And some people get really opinionated about color themes, so I thought, this is a nice little tip that you can use to make your Visual Studio Code experience even more fun. You can click on that gear icon. You can click on something called settings, okay? And once you've opened up settings, choose, I'm gonna make sure I'm zoomed in so you can actually see this properly. Choose the workbench and the appearance setting so that you can actually choose your color theme. So I've used dark modern. Erwin said Tokyo Night is your favorite. Is Tokyo Night here? Damn, I don't think Tokyo Night is here. Oh, okay, next time. But there's all these different colors that you can use, and these subtle color changes honestly make a big difference. So there's even light mode. Oh my gosh, my eyes. There's also Monokai. Yeah, there are all these different settings that you can use to set up your Visual Studio Code. Oh my gosh, everyone has such cool color options. Find the function says Punk Runner. You know what? I need to learn from everyone on how you're using Visual Studio Code and all of these color themes, because Tokyo Night and Punk Runner sound awesome. Okay, cool. So once you have set yourself up for using Visual Studio Code, we're going to set up a new terminal. So how we're going to do this is you're going to visit the top bar, okay? And in that top bar, you're going to click on Terminal and click on New Terminal. Okay, and that sets up a new terminal for you. You can find your terminal here, at the bottom. Now, I already had a terminal running, which is why there's 2 things here, and I don't actually need one of them. But really, this is what your terminal should look like once you've set it up. And dun dun dun, a terminal is just this very, very simple looking interface. Okay, there's not a lot of like bells and whistles in a terminal, and the reason for that is honestly it's just so true. Okay, get to know what a terminal is before we start using it. A terminal is kind of a place where you will send instructions to your computer using text instead of clicks. So you know how we just now used clicks to create a new folder called DevOps. We used clicks and dragged things into that folder so that we can, move our private key file into our DevOps folder. We did all that using clicks and drags. But what if we had to give those commands using text? What if we almost wanted to send a text to our computer's operating system and say, hey, can you just create a new folder for me called DevOps in my desktop, and can you move my file called nextwork keypair.pem into that folder? You can actually do all of that using text commands, so you don't have to use click and drag and all of these, I guess more like visual ways to do it instead. Now, when you first start using the terminal, you might feel like, oh my god, having to learn these commands takes so much more time. Why can't I just click and drag everything? Well, there isn't going to be much of a click and drag kind of interface for your EC2 instance, right? Because we physically don't have this computer in front of us. How are we going to use a mouse pad to click and drag things? So learning how to use commands is very, very powerful for you to be able to control virtual computers like your EC2 instance. Using text commands, using the terminal to control things is also a much more efficient way in the long run. It might take longer now, but it's going to be a lot quicker to use the terminal compared to using click and drag once you get very, very familiar with it. So let's use the power of the terminal, okay? And we're going to use the power of our terminal to navigate to the DevOps folder. Okay, instead of now using clicks to find the DevOps folder and click into it, we're going to start using the terminal to do this. So right now, where is our terminal? Okay, what is the equivalent of this kind of blank state that we're seeing in the terminal here? So technically our terminal is in something that's kind of called the home directory. And to get to your desktop, it's just going to have to visit the folder that's called desktop. Okay, so we will use something called cd, that is the command for changing directory, which means kind of like changing which folder that you're in, to go from the home directory, kind of like the starting space, which is signified by the squiggly line, and we're saying, okay, go from the squiggly line, okay, we're gonna enter into desktop, okay, we want to go into this folder that's called desktop. And then from there, from the desktop folder, we want to go into that subfolder called DevOps. Okay? So with that command, I just pressed enter after that, and you can see that I've entered into the folder called DevOps. I've entered into it, you can tell, because now my new line, the command here, mentions DevOps, and it tells me that my current location is DevOps. Okay, so let us quickly summarize that by mentioning terminal is a space for us to send text-based commands to control and create actions, for with our computer or server. Okay, and what else could we mention about our terminal? I would say there isn't. I think the main thing to understand when you explain a terminal is that using a terminal really replaces using clicks and drags, and every computer has one, including EC2 instances, EC2 servers. What was the first command you ran in your terminal? Yeah, that first command we ran was changing the directory. The first command we ran for this project is this, which changes our directory from the home directory into the DevOps folder housing our private key. Cool, all done. Awesome to see everyone in the chat as well. Deepak saying hi. I am new here. Welcome, Deepak. Nice to meet you. Is this your very first AWS project by any chance? We also have I am Amos saying welcome. Thank you so much for welcoming Deepak. Awesome. And we also have Erwin mentioning type pwd to check if you're in the correct folder. Ooh, should we do that here? PWD stands for print working directory. So it basically says, can you please output to me the directory or the folder that I'm currently on? So let's do that. Aha! So the moment I typed in PWD, it tells me that I am in this is the directory, this is my directory right now. Very helpful. Thanks for mentioning that, Erwin. And yes, thank you so much for I am a mist for catching up Deepak on what we've done. Just keep up with Net. You catch up. I agree. Deepak, welcome. You absolutely catch up. This is super beginner friendly. We're starting with the basics in this project. So once you're in the DevOps folder, you'll want to check, okay, can my terminal actually find my private key file from here? Let us run a command called ls, which is to list out all of the items within the current directory. So when we run ls, we're basically saying, can you list out everything that's inside the DevOps folder? And here we go. We can actually see that there is one thing that was listed out, and that is exactly our private key file. Okay, so our terminal can absolutely access this file that we were just clicking and dragging with, and that we downloaded from the internet. And I just find it really cool that there are just so many different ways to achieve the same things. And in this case, we can absolutely just use the terminal to check what's inside a folder without needing to double click and navigate through a much more visual interface. Okay, so once we've done that, we're now ready to change the permissions of our pen file. Okay, so why are we changing the permissions of our pen file? Because we need to use this pen file to get access to our EC2 instance. And if we don't change the permissions of our pen file, one, we might not actually have permission to access that pen file ourselves, so we need to make sure we have access to this pen file. And two, it is very helpful if we can block out access for everyone else from accessing our pen file. And that just really keeps that file secure to just us. Okay, so let us run this now. And for Mac and Linux users, all right, it is called chmod, okay, change mode. And then 400 is basically one way to say it is readable by yourself, but for other users, other groups, they have no access at all. And the file that we're trying to change here is nextworkkeypair.pen. So let's make sure we mention the file name as well. All right, so let me run that. Done. Just like that, I've changed the permissions of the pen file. There's no other kind of output from the terminal, and that's totally okay. If we can use this pen file later in this project, at least that is proof that we have read access to this pen file. Cool. Awesome work. So if you run into errors again, please make sure you check in with the Nextwork community. Okay, we'll be able to help each other out. In the meantime, let's take a screenshot here to show proof that we ran this command that helped us update our private keys permissions. Okay, so we'll just take a screenshot of this entire terminal here, and then we'll run that through. We'll update that. How did you change your file's permissions? Okay, let's answer this question by mentioning I also updated my private keys permissions by, I like to say we, because we are doing this together. So we also updated our private keys permissions We also updated our private keys permissions by, I would say, by running the chmod command. And if you're using Windows, your command will look slightly different. It's gonna look like this. It's called ICACLs. Okay, and the explanations for that are right here. Much love to all the Windows users out there. Unfortunately, I wish I could run the Windows commands live as well. But if you run into any issues with them, please let us know. We have some awesome Windows experts in the community. Shout out to Praneeth, who was here earlier in the chat, and we'll be sure to help you out as well. So in our case, okay, using Mac and Linux, we also updated our private keys permissions by running the chmod command. This command, we used chmod 400 network key pair.pem to specify that we will have read permission to that file, and block out access for other users and groups. A big shout out as well to find the function in the chat for saying you can type ls-l to check the permissions. Most new terminals will let you use ll also. Oh, I didn't know about the second part. I think, if I'm not wrong, ls-l, and then you just have to go network key pair.pem in order to see the permissions. The output can be a little bit hard to understand if this is your very first time seeing it, but you know, since find the functions mentioned it, why don't we have a look at that together? So what I've just run is ls-l network key pair.pem, which basically means like list out, you know, the details, or maybe just like the permission details of network key pair.pem. And you can see here that we have a -r and then a -- okay, @1 Natasha Ong staff, and there are a few other details here. Okay, but what you'll need to know here is that the -r signifies read only, I think, for the owner, or like for this current user. The fact that it's like the first element here, -r, and then the fact that there are all these dashes at the end just signifies that all other kinds of like users and groups don't have access to this file. So that's how you can kind of read the output of ls-l using this command. Okay, that was not a required part of this project, just a fun little extension. Yeah, really love that this live just takes on such an organic kind of route, because everyone has such interesting questions and like suggestions as well. So thank you so much, everyone. Okay, so we are now more than halfway. I would say, okay, we are halfway through now, and we're gonna speed up a little bit now because we have done like the setup, and we're now gonna go into connecting to the EC2 instance. So we have an EC2 instance that's working. It's somewhere in the cloud. It's a virtual server running somewhere else. And then we have also VSCode working. Okay, so we have installed VSCode. We have also checked that using the terminal through VSCode is working for us. So we have the ingredients that we need to combine these two and set up a connection between us with our EC2 instance. Okay, so we're gonna use VSCode and the terminal in VSCode to run a few commands, okay, to connect us to the EC2 instance. Some of these, this command looks a little bit more complicated than the two commands we've run so far, but trust me, you're gonna be fine, and we're gonna do this together, okay? So, thank you everyone for saying, for helping each other out with understanding ls-l as well. That is very, very kind. So in this step, we are running commands through VS Code, through the command and we are running commands through the terminal, using VS Code. Okay, I got confused there, but the sentence I was really trying to say is, in this step, we are using VS Code to run terminal commands that connects us with our EC2 instance in an SSH connection. Cool. So that's exactly what we're doing here. We're going to be running some text commands, and that text command requires a few pieces of details. Okay, one detail is it needs to understand the address of the EC2 instance you're trying to connect to, and then once it knows the EC2 instance you're trying to connect to, it's going to say, do you have access to that EC2 instance? So it needs an address and it needs access. Address and access. Address and access. We need these two pieces of information to set up the command we need to get access to that EC2 instance. Okay, so the first thing we're going to tackle is the address. Where is our EC2 instance in the world of virtual servers? We will find out by heading back to our AWS Management Console, and whoopsie daisies. And from our AWS Management Console, we're going to visit the instances page to see the instance that we've set up. Okay, over here, and we're going to select the checkbox next to it, and then we're going to select, hey, why is this checkbox not selecting? Can I try select it again? It's not selecting. That's so mean. Can you please select checkbox? Let me refresh my page. Oh, it's okay. It's selecting now just as I refresh my page. All right, we're going to select the checkbox. All right, and in the details tab for our EC2 instance, dun dun dun. Oh, there's something funny happening with my computer today. Okay, there we go. I think it's moving. All right, it's a bit stubborn today, but that's okay. I'm gonna scroll so you can see it easily. In the details tab, let's keep scrolling until you find something called the public DNS. Oh, do you see that? Public IPv4 DNS. This thing over here is going to give us what we need for address. Okay, we need address and access. Public IPv4 DNS gives us the address. All right, so I'm gonna let us take a second to read this definition here, and then we're gonna talk about it in the question below. Awesome. So a public IPv4 DNS, and DNS stands for domain name system. But really what we need to know here is that a public IPv4 DNS is basically the public address for your EC2 server. So an EC2 instance, a virtual server, once it's launched into the world, it can have actually different addresses that it uses. And the public IPv4 DNS is something that the internet can use to find and connect to your instance. If you do our networking series of projects, you're going to learn that there's also something called a private address, but we're not going to go into that. Let's just talk about the public address, which tells you that with this address over here, other computers, connected to the internet can find and connect to the EC2 instance. Okay, so that's going to be us. We're going to be copying this, all right? And we're going to be using that in a second. Cool. So now that we know our EC2 instance's public IPv4 DNS, so basically it's public address, let us have a quick explanation here. A server's IPv4, I feel like IPv, the V needs to be lowercase a. Let's fix that in a second. A server's IPv4 DNS is its public address. For us, computers, servers connected to the internet can use public IPv4 DNS to find and locate another server. Cool. So let us connect to that EC2 instance now that we have the address. Okay, and that command that helps us with connecting to the EC2 instance is called SSH. Remember, SSH is secure shell -I, and then we're going to enter the path to your .pem file, and then we're also going to enter EC2 user at your public IPv4 DNS. Okay, cool. So replace in this command path to your .pem file with the actual path to that private key to the .pem file that you have in your downloads folder, in your DevOps folder. And then we're going to replace the your public IPv4 DNS, this part, with the public DNS that we've just found and we've just copied. Okay, so for us, do we know what is the path to our .pem file? Well, we can write it out in full. So if I were to write it out in the most proper way, I would go SSH, secure shell, and then we're connecting to, connecting with this authentication file that we have, the key, which is under the home directory. It's within desktop. It's in my DevOps folder, and it's called nextwork key pair .pem. Okay, so that is the path to our key, and then we're going to say we are going to get access to EC2 user at your public IPv4 DNS that we've copied. So we'll paste that. Okay, so that is the IPv4 DNS for this instance. Do you see how, like that, we have kind of answered the two key questions that we need to set up the SSH connection? We needed address and access. Okay, and we have the address here. All right, this is the address, the IPv4 DNS, and we show that we have access by giving them literally the path to your private key, the path to your half of the key pair that's going to unlock the EC2 instance that's sitting here. Isn't that pretty cool? I love it when things can be like explained in such a logical way, and this to me just, it is very, very sound. It's very, very logical. We just need where, and whether you have the right key. All right, let's just press enter. So here we are being asked to confirm the authenticity of the host. Okay, so that just means that our local computer, the server that you're using, is asking you, hey, do you actually trust this computer that you're connecting to? Okay, because when you connect to a server like this, you could end up exposing yourself to unwanted traffic, or if you don't really know what's on the other side. So you're gonna say, yeah, okay, like I trust the authenticity of this EC2 instance that I've set up myself in AWS. So you're gonna type in yes, and ta-da, just like that, you're kind of let through the doors into your EC2 instance that's hosted in the cloud. And the moment you see this awesome bird here, you kind of like have the confirmation that you're now welcome into that EC2 instance. I love seeing this bird so much. It's like one of my favorite sights of 2024 because I've had to try really hard to get into this step in different kinds of occasions. So to see that bird is always like a breath, like just a sigh of relief that like, oh, I've made it in. I've made it in. We got in. That's awesome. So you also know that you've connected to your EC2 instance if you see that, how previously we were just called your username at whatever like device or whatever IP is going on for your local device. But scroll down, you're going to see your terminal is now called your EC2 instance, which means you're now inside the terminal for your EC2 instance. You're now controlling your EC2 instance through this terminal that you're looking at. And that kind of means we've switched computers, technically, from working on our own computer to now working within the EC2 instance. I think that's just such a cool transition to have. We kind of just like switched computers without really needing to switch physically. Isn't that just so cool? So let's take a screenshot of that successful connection to our EC2 instance. Boom, took that screenshot. And if you're listening right now, if you're tuning in and you see that we've connected to this EC2 instance, let's celebrate in the chat. Chuck in a little emoji, a little celebration emoji for us in the chat now that we've successfully connected to the EC2 instance. So to connect to my EC2 instance, to connect to our EC2 instance, we ran the command. What was the command we ran? Do you remember? The command we ran is called ssh-i and then we had the path to .pen file, and then we also said, we also mentioned EC2 user. EC2 user basically is the default user that comes with the key pair that we used, that we created. Correct me if I'm wrong, actually. I'm starting to wonder, is EC2 user, does it come with actually setting up the virtual machine itself, or does it come with the key pair? I'm now starting to feel a little bit like, oh wait, does it actually come with the key pair, or does it come just with the EC2 instance? It actually might just like come with the EC2 instance, if I remember correctly, but I could be wrong actually. Fact check me if I'm saying something wrong there. And if we don't have the answer in the next few minutes, I will be more than happy to search that up and just make sure that I've said the correct thing there. So ssh-i, there's the path to the .pen file, EC2 user at, and then the IPv4 DNS, IPv4 DNS of the EC2 instance. This command set up an SSH connection that uses the .pen file, i.e. our private key, and the public address of our EC2 instance. Awesome stuff. I'll just click done and we'll move on to the next step. Congratulations. We're now definitely more than halfway through, and we now just have a few more things to do before we can say we've set up a web app in the cloud. Now, we have the connection all set up now. We are literally working inside the EC2 instance that needs to be housing our Java web app files. So what that means is we've set up the house to house our web app files. We've set up a way for us to communicate with our with that house, and then we've just set up a way for us to connect and unlock the front door, and now we're inside the house. Okay, we're now inside the house that will house our Java web app files, and in this step we're going to be installing two tools that's going to help us with creating that web app from scratch. So Apache Maven and Amazon Coretto 8, or really Java, are the two tools we'll be installing into this house so that we can set up our web app. All right, so let us explain that in this step, we are going to install two tools that help us with setting up a web app inside our setting up web app files in our EC2 instance. These two tools, Maven and Java, these two tools, Maven and Java, can be installed just with the command line, okay, i.e. the terminal. Alright, so let's click done and let's get started with installing these two tools. Alright, so first things first. My goodness, this looks so intensely long in this area. So if you're a reader, go ahead, and I hope you enjoy this explanation about Apache Maven. In short, what's happening here is Apache Maven is this very powerful tool that automates the building process of software. And building is this process that turns your code into a final product, like web apps. It is that process of converting your code, making it understandable to a machine, and linking it to all of the different dependencies or the packages that it uses, and it also packages it up. It packages it up so it becomes this little file that you can easily put on another server and say, oh, can you run this thing? And by running, it means make it available to the world. You can host it. You can make it work, on a target computer. And the reason why building an Apache Maven is used in this project today is because it is going to be a very, very powerful tool for us to install packages as well, unpack those packages, and use those packages to create a web app for us. Another way that we're going to use Maven is it's actually going to help us with building the web app that we use. So we're going to use Maven to unpack a few packages that helps us with creating the web app. And once we create the web app and all of its files, we're later also going to use Maven to crumple up all of our files into this package. And which is kind of like a zip file. You know how a zip file kind of just like crumples up and just contains all these little different files inside? It's going to just like create the zip file for us so that it's very easy for us to use. It's very easy for other servers to host our web app later on in this series. But as you can see here, there's so much use for Maven in this world. Like I can't imagine just how big the ripple effects are of Maven existing in this world. The way that it helps with the building process of software is just so super valuable into producing just functional software that's more than just like code in a few files that actually come together, work together, and can run for your clients or for your users. So that's super cool. I'm a big fan of it, and we're going to install Maven by running these commands. Now these commands are 4 lines, not just one, but you can copy them and run them all together in your terminal without needing to run them line by line. Yeah? And while that's running, okay, I'm going to quickly check in on the chat and say, yeah, thank you so much to everyone saying, great job, I'm loving it. Really appreciate that. Cool. We also have Duke asking a very good question here. I'm having challenges SSHing into my EC2. Managed to use PuTTY for it. Is that good enough? I think that should be all good. I haven't actually used PuTTY myself for this project, but I don't foresee any problems, at least for this specific project. I'm trying to think. I think it should be okay. I don't think anything else in this project really relies on you using that SSH connection to it. But if you get stuck, please let us know. My gut instinct says that's totally okay and that it should be good enough. But if you get stuck, you can either chuck that into the chat right now, or you can ask in the community if it's after this live, and we can sort that out together. Great question though. All right, in the meantime, oh my goodness, Apache Maven has gone and just like installed itself. That was very, very quick. And what we really need to understand here is these commands and all these commands over here that we've run, those 4 lines, they help to just basically say, here is the link to like a zip file that we want to download. Can you download it? And then can you open that file and stuff, so you're installing Maven into this computer. Now, is it your local computer that it's installing Maven to? Have you just installed Maven to your local computer? No, actually, no, because we've run these commands in a terminal that's for your EC2 instance. So what you've done here is you've actually installed Maven into your EC2 instance and not your own local computer, even though what it looks like you're just running commands. But because the terminal is for your EC2 instance, it's like the house that you've installed it in is that house, that EC2 instance that's in the cloud. So let us answer this question quickly to process those learnings. So we're going to say Apache Maven is a tool or really a package manager for the building process of software. Maven is extremely helpful for bringing in packages into our application, i.e. any external software tools that we'll use to build our web app. I'm going to try to be concise and actually just delete that sentence. So Maven is extremely helpful for bringing in packages into our application, and packaging up our own web app once we've developed it. Why are you using Maven in this project? I feel like, oh no, I double answered again. I have a feeling a part of that question has been answered already in the previous one. So let us use this for the next question. So Maven is required in this project because it's extremely helpful for bringing in packages into our application and packaging up, and for packaging up our own web app once we've developed it. And I think this can be expanded as a definition if you'd like to mention that the building process involves compiling and packaging code so that it can be hosted on a server, etc. Cool. I also see Erwin reassuring that Putty should be okay. Longtime Putty user here. Oh, good to hear. Is it Putty or Putty? I just realized it could be Putty actually. And we also have King of Zamunda saying, is Putty timing out, Duke? What is the issue you're facing? Yeah, I would love to know what are the issues you're facing with SSH, Duke. That could be really, really helpful to know, just in case we need to update this project as well. Okay, cool. So now that we've installed Maven, next up, we're going to install the next tool, which is called Java 8. Or more specifically, we're going to use a version of this that's called Amazon Coretto 8. And we're going to run these 3 commands next. I'm just going to copy and paste them now and let it run as we understand it, because it takes a few minutes. Well, no, not a few minutes. It takes like maybe 30 seconds or something for it to finish installing. But as you can see, off it goes. Oh, it's actually very, very fast at installing. And look at all these packages that just get installed immediately the moment you start running this command for running these commands for installing Java. Now, what is Java? What is Amazon Coretto 8? There's so many lines going on here, but really what's happening is actually very, very simple. The text you see after running those commands is the terminal simply keeping you updated, giving you progress update about where it is in the process of installing Java. So don't be afraid by all of this output like kind of frantically getting thrown at you. It's basically a terminal saying like, I've just done this, and this, and this, and this. Okay, there are a lot of packages to install when you install Java, and your terminal is just so fast at it that the updates are coming very, very quickly. And yet the process of installing something is just so fun to track as well. You know, it tells you, okay, these are all of the packages I'm gonna install. You know, it tells you that here. It tells you like, okay, here are all of the packages I'm going to install. Over here, these are all the versions that I'm gonna install. This is the size of all the things I'm gonna install. And then it's gonna say, all right, I'm going to just get ready to install these now. You know, this is how long it took for me to actually install these. 2 seconds, super quick. And then, you know, after the installation of all of these, there's also some verifying to make sure that you've installed something correctly without it, I guess, like something messing up in the installation process. So really, really fun, like to see so many updates come out. And if you're really, really curious, you can even try run this in ChatGPT or something to understand what are some of the key packages or the key pieces of Java that was installed here. Okay, cool. But if we want to understand the command itself, really this command was basically saying, first let's install Java. Okay, so you're gonna install Java over here, and then you're going to export Java home, and there's this little path here. All right, so this second command tells your EC2 instance how it can find Java, because later on your EC2 instance or your terminal needs to be able to run commands in Java commands. So it needs to understand like, where is Java, so that I can use that tool to run the Java commands. Okay, and the last command is a time saver. This last command is basically saving Java's location somewhere, so that later on when you were to run commands in Java, you can easily just give them this reference to a path, so that you can use that path reference without needing to ask you like, oh, where's Java for you? Where's Java for you? Where's Java for you? You're basically saving time from having to repeat yourself by creating this path variable right now. But yeah, this is really cool. If you don't know what Java is, it is a very, very popular programming language used to build different types of applications. You know, web apps are just one of them. All kinds of applications really can be built with Java. And Amazon Coretto 8, which is the name we've thrown around a little bit in this step, is a specific version of Java that we're just using for this project. Okay, it's completely free to use. Cool. So Java is a programming language used to develop all kinds of applications. We downloaded Amazon Coretto. I think Coretto is with 1 R. Oh, it's with 2 R's. Okay, I'm glad I checked. So we downloaded Amazon Coretto 8, which is a specific version of Java that's managed by Amazon, AWS. Cool. Why are you using Java in this project? Let us give it a little answer as well. So Java is required in this project because we want to build a Java web app, and we will need to install it first in order to run any Java commands. Sweet. Let's just press done. Cool. We can now also run 2 commands that helps us with verifying that what we've installed was installed correctly. Shall we do that? Let us run mvn-v to verify that we've installed Maven correctly. Boom, it looks good. Apache Maven 3.5.2 is what we want to see. And then we can also run this command called java-version to check if we have the right Java version too. And we do, it's 1.8.0. Okay, so this looks right. Great question. Using SSH via the terminal, are we able to launch a GUI on this EC2 instance? Thanks, Natasha. I wish I could tell you the answer to this one, Abang. I think I haven't been familiar with being able to launch a GUI on an EC2 instance, actually. I've always just been using the terminal. I am actually not quite sure if this is something that I can do from the terminal for an EC2 instance. We're about to do something that lets you use VSCode as an IDE for files in your EC2 instance. And that kind of puts us one step closer towards having a very, very visual interface on what's inside, a virtual server. But I know that doesn't quite compare with a GUI. Interesting question though. If there's anyone in the chat that would be able to share their thoughts on this one, I would love to hear it. If it's even like a simple command, we can even try running that like in this session too. Okay, so in the meantime, let's move on to the next step, because we're getting very, very close now. We're now on the step of creating the actual application itself. So we're now, we have the house for our web app files. We've set up our connection to the house, to the EC2 instance. We've unlocked it with the key pair. We've gone inside the house, and we've even installed 2 tools. It's kind of like bringing in 2 builders that's going to help us build our web app. In this step, we're bringing all of these ingredients together to create the application now. So we've assembled both Maven and Java. Let us generate the web app, okay, using the tools that we have. So in this step, we are going to set up. In this step, we are going to set up a basic web app using Maven and Java, which will generate the web app's structure for us. Which will generate the web app structure inside the EC2 instance that we've launched. I would love to even mention that we will run the commands to do this in the terminal in VSCode. Okay, so the reason why I just wanted to include all this detail is because in this one paragraph, we're really tying together some key skills that we're learning, or key tools that we're using in this project. VS Code, Terminal, EC2, Java, Maven and Java. So it's really cool to be able to just start tying together all these different loose pieces together in this one step. So this one step is also extremely simple. What we're going to do is we're going to just run this code in the EC2 instance terminal. Okay. And then just like that, you're going to see a web app get set up from it. Yeah, so it's going to take a bit of time. Again, you're going to see this big wave of output, and I'm just going to drag this down a little actually so that it doesn't become too distracting while we break down the commands that we've run and understand like how that actually generated a web app for us. I just realized it stopped. It's actually already built the web app, so I'm just going to drag it back up so you can see it, and let's talk about it. So when you run a command that starts with MVN, it means that you're using the Maven. You're using Maven as a tool for this command. You're running a Maven command. So you're asking Maven to perform this task that's called archetype generate. It means, hey Maven, can you please generate a new web app for me using this template that's called archetype. So generate a very, very basic web app. And I want to call that web app next web project. That's the name of the web app, or the name of like the web app's application files. And then the artifact ID is basically saying, actually the artifact ID specifies that you're just creating a web app. So the Maven archetype, or the template that you're using, is the web app template. Okay, and then the interactive mode files thing is something that is just a time saver for you. It's basically saying, don't ask me to confirm anything, just go ahead and install everything or generate everything you need to create that web app for me. Okay, so once it's done, you will see build success at the bottom, which is a very, very good confirmation really that what you've chosen to build is now successfully built. All done. So we'll take a screenshot of that step. And here we go, build success. It feels so good, honestly. Actually, no, I don't really like that screenshot. I'm gonna do one where I can see the top line as well, the top dashed line. Just like that. I think that looks pretty mighty fine. And I'm gonna upload that screenshot in there. How did you create a Java web app? Great question. I generated a Java web app using the command. We generated a Java web app using the command mvn archetype generate, which helps us set up, which is a command that lets us, which is a command that sets up a basic web app using the archetype, using Maven's archetype template. Cool. Can you see your Java web app? Your response to this won't be in your documentation, but please share your response in the chat. Can you see your Java web app right now? Where is it, if you can? And how do you think you could actually find and edit your Java web app's files? Your responses to this won't be in your documentation, but this is simply a question to start jig your curiosity a little bit. See what you think about whether or not you can actually access your Java web app from here. Great work in the chat, everyone. Everyone is jumping in on Duke's question, I think. Or about the GUI question from Abang. Benedict says, you could probably install a desktop environment in VNC server. Erwin says, yep, you sure can. And find a function says you can use VNC. AWS suggests using Tiger VNC. Medium has also several walkthroughs for this. Just search EC2 GUI and a bunch of different tutorials pop up. That's cool. Great to know. Thank you so much. Find the function. Maybe this is something that we can use in the next part because I'm very, very curious about an EC2 GUI myself. And TeachNet says, teaching good, Natasha. Greetings from Nigeria. My goodness. Thank you so much for coming out here. How's your day so far, TeachNet? So my response to this is that currently there is no way to view the Java web app files intuitively because technically, if you want, we've learned the terminal command for change directory, haven't we? So we can go ls to list out our directory. And look, we can actually technically go cd, so change directory, into your Network web project. Okay, and then you can run ls again, list things out again. Interesting, you can start to see that there are actually files that's been created when you ran the command to generate the web app. But really, was there like a very clickable way or a very intuitive way for us to see those files? Technically, no, not yet. You know, the terminal is pretty much our best bet based on the things that we've learned so far. So currently, there's no way to view the Java web app files intuitively. I can view, or actually, we can view these files through, if we ran cd in the terminal and listing out the contents within Network web app. Okay, so that's kind of like our best option so far based on the things that we've learned. So let us click done and let us start wondering, what can we do to solve this? You know, what is a way for us to see the contents within Network web project? Oh, I just realized I made a typo here. It should be Network web project. Aha, I have the editing feature in my account, so I can actually edit that to Network web project like this, and then click done again. Cool. All right, so in this final step in this project, before we wrap up for today, we're going to connect VSCode with our EC2 instance. So from that question just now, you might start to think, have I really just set up a web app? Where is it? You know, how can I actually see it? It doesn't feel really real when technically you've generated a web app in the previous step, but it's not a very, very visual experience so far. It's very hard to understand whether you've actually created a web app. Where is it? What are the files inside? You can navigate using the terminal. You can use like cd, you can use ls, but it takes a bit of time to jump between files when you're using that kind of system. So is there a better way for us to access our web app files and edit it? Yeah, so find the function has given us a very, very good hint here by saying in VS Code, you will see a nice file tree. And yes, you will. Let us figure out how we can get that file tree working for a remote server, you know, because what's very intuitive in VS Code is the ability to just load files that's already in your local computer. In our case, because these files are actually inside the EC2 instance, it's not as easy for us to just load the files and see this file tree that find the function is referring to. We can still find it though by doing this next step. So step 7, we're going to connect VS Code with your instance, and we're going to do this using an extension. Yeah, so we've had someone also mention at the very start a definition for VS Code is that it comes with this huge library of extensions. And in this case, we're going to install one of them to help us with connecting VS Code to EC2, and use that connection to kind of unlock the powers of having an IDE like VS Code. So we are here. We are now in this step where we're going to use VS Code to unlock its powers and then edit this file that's been generated for us, but we can't actually really see yet. It's called index.jsp. We're about to edit it soon. Okay, if you're thinking, 1 second, we're already seeing our EC2 instance. We're already using it in its terminal. We're already using it in our terminal. So why can't we just open a file? Why can't we just open it right now? And if we were to open a folder like this, okay, click on open folder, you're gonna see that all the folders is gonna give you access to is just what's in your local computer. You haven't technically connected VS Code directly to your EC2 instance yet. The connection you've set up in the commands that you run in the terminal so far, those commands set up a connection between you to your EC2 instance. Yeah, it's not really between VS Code and the EC2 instance, it's between you and your computer with that EC2 instance. But what we're about to do in this step is to actually connect VS Code itself to the EC2 instance, so that you can actually just open folders like your Nextwork web app project that's been generated for you, and it's just sitting inside that EC2 instance now, waiting for you to open it and waiting for you to edit it. Okay, so I hope that explanation was clear. If it was, please let me know in the chat. It really helps with understanding whether or not the explanations are okay. And let us head on. So in this step, we are going to set up a direct connection between our EC2 instance and VS Code so that we can unlock VS Code's amazing IDE features on our instance. This is different to the direct SSH connection we've set up between ourselves and the EC2 instance. Cool. We're gonna press done and move on to the next part. All right, so how we're gonna do this is, I just realized, by the way, my file explorer and everything has been on my right hand side, but really I think where it usually looks is it should be in the left hand side here. So I'm gonna move this so that it looks like what you see here. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna click on the extensions icon over here, and we're gonna search for the extension called remote-SSH. Okay, so we're gonna install remote SSH. I'm gonna expand this so you can actually see it. So we're gonna install this right away. And in the meantime, while that's installing, what is remote SSH? It is an extension in VS Code. So you can think of these extensions as additional tools you can pull into your VS Code to make it even more powerful. And in this case, the remote SSH extension lets you connect directly via SSH to another computer. And this lets you use VS Code to work on files or run programs on that other computer, on that other server, as if you were just using it on your own computer. You know how when we try to click on open folder and we're like, oh dang it, we can only see folders that's within our local computer. Now that we've set up remote SSH, there's going to be a way for us to click on open folder, and now we can see a list of folders that we can open on our virtual server. Okay, and that really changes the game for us, because now we're not just using VS Code for our local files, we can now use it for the files that we've set up in our EC2 instance. Okay, so how this remote SSH connection is going to work is we're going to start by clicking on that double arrow icon that gets set up when you install remote SSH. Click on that, and that's like your shortcut to getting access to the remote SSH features. So the first feature we're going to use is, or really the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to connect to host. Okay, we're going to select that. And then we're going to select add new SSH host. I've noticed here that there is an existing host here, but that really shouldn't exist. I think this is just a host that has been living here from something else. So I'm just going to remove that so that it looks like what it should look like on your computer. So we're going to click on connect to host and then add new SSH host at the very top here. So the SSH host, that host thing is basically the target EC2 instance that we're going to be connecting to. When you add a new SSH host, you're basically saying who are you wanting to connect to using SSH. So we're going to add a new host for us so that we can say that we want to connect to our EC2 instance. Let us type in a very, very familiar command to us. Okay, over here. Because we run this command before. When we set up that direct connection to the EC2 instance ourselves, we ran this command. We're going to run it again. SSH-I, and then the path to your .pem file. That path should be something like this. Okay, squiggly line /desktop/DevOps. And what is the name of the file? Do you remember? It's called nextworkkeepair.pem. Yeah, and then we also need the public IPv4 DNS. Okay, that's probably something we need to copy one more time over here, because we're now going to say EC2 at EC2-user at location. Okay, and then we're going to press enter. Okay, once you enter that, you can get access to something called a configuration file. And that configuration file is basically a file that stores all of the details that you have on all of the SSH hosts that you want to connect to. So it's kind of like your address book of SSH connections. And we're going to open that config file. Okay. And you can see here that it's kind of written down in its address book. This is the host you can connect to. That's our EC2 instance, the IPv4 address, that location. And then you have the identity file. So this is our private key file, so which is basically our identity, our authentication to get access to that EC2 instance. So we have the address and we have the access. And it now knows that we're going to be logging into that EC2 instance as a user. That's called EC2-user, which is a very, very default username that we didn't change from when we set up that EC2 instance. So it's just the default name. Yeah. Okay, so once we set that up, let's just confirm that all the details are correct. Does this match up to the location, the DNS in your details page for your instance? Does this match up with the actual path to your key pair? Is EC2 user actually a user in your EC2 instance? If you set up your EC2 instance without really changing any user details, this should be okay. So let us explain why we installed remote SSH. So we can say, I installed the remote SSH extension to, why is that? The reason for this is so that, we installed the remote SSH extension to connect VSCode directly to our EC2 instance. Doing this means we can later use VS Code as an IDE for the Java web app files in our EC2 instance. This makes editing our web app much simpler. Much simpler, more efficient. Cool. What was in the configuration file? This handy little configuration file here. So configuration details, required to set up a remote connection, include, and if you're new to the term remote connection, by the way, remote basically just means it is not physically here. We're setting up a connection to a remote server, which is why it's called a remote connection. Cool. Configuration details required to set up a remote connection include the host name, i.e. the IPv4 DNS of our EC2 instance. Also included the location of our key pairs, the location of our private key in our local computer, and the user we are using, and the SSH host user that we are connecting to. Cool. Once it's done, just click done. And now we have the configuration set up to connect VS Code with our EC2 instance. We're gonna just run that connection now. Let's click on that double arrow button on the bottom left hand corner again, and let's select the connect to host button again. And then you should now see our EC2 instance's name at the very top. Very, very clean. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on that EC2 instance or that IPv4 DNS, and boom, the moment you click, you get taken to this new window. And then just keep looking at the bottom left hand corner of your screen. It says opening remote for now, but let us zoom in so we can see this. Ta-da! In the bottom left hand corner, you should be able to see that this is the address of your EC2 instance. As you can see, it's a different kind of bottom left corner to our normal VS Code window. The moment you see this in your window, it is an indication that you've now opened a VS Code window for your EC2 instance. That's really cool. Do you still remember why we're doing this? Well, we're really doing this so that we can edit our web app files using the power of an IDE. And like we've mentioned before, an IDE is a very, very powerful tool because it makes managing code and your code projects really, really easy. It's just like the reason why we would use a word processor like Microsoft Word to edit documents. When we want to bring that power to this EC2 instance that we've set up in the cloud. So let's do that now. So let us try open our Nextwork web app projects files by going into the Explorer again. Okay, and we're going to click on open folder again. And what are you going to see this time? Previously, when we clicked on the open folder icon, what happened? It opened up this dialog for us to select local files. So what's going to happen when I now select open folder and I'm inside and I'm connected via SSH to the EC2 instance? Oh, something different. So now I've clicked open folder, and what I see is actually a list of files or folders that I can pick, and these files and folders don't really belong into my local computer. These files and folders belong inside the EC2 instance. So now I get to select a way to open files and folders in the EC2 instance. Interesting. So let us select the Network Web project. So this is the folder connecting that collects all of our web app project files. So let's select that, and let's select OK. Dun, 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 dun. Do you trust the authors of the files? Yeah, it's pretty much you. That was pretty much the person that created those files. Ta-da! Look at what's in our Explorer now. We now have the ability to view all of the folders and the files for our application, our web app application, our web app files, even though they're actually stored in that EC2 instance, far away from us. But we can still get access to it, and we can still view it like it is a folder that's stored in our local computer. This is a very, very powerful feature because now you can just explore all of your files at a glance. No more needing to use the terminal to go change directory, go into this folder, list out all the items, change directory again, list out all the items, go into this folder. Like the process of using a terminal can be a lot longer, whereas this IDE here, VSCode here, has the power to just kind of make it a lot easier to view. Yeah, so what we're going to do now to really explore our work is to go click into all of these subfolders, and all of the subfolders have this little toggle kind of button going on, okay? And just expand what's inside this web app. All right, so we've expanded it just like that. That was very quick. So you can see that we have our Network Web project as the main folder, and inside that we have something called SRC, which is source, and it collects all of our source code, meaning it codes together all the files that define what your web app looks like and how it works. Okay, so very, very important folder to have for a web app. So inside source, we even have subfolders. We even have something called index.jsp. There's something called a pom file. So these are all files that make up a web app, and they're already inside your EC2 instance because you used Maven and Java to generate this web app in step 6 earlier in this project. Cool. So let us take a screenshot of our file explorer with all of the project folders expanded. Okay, let's just make it look like this. So let's take a screenshot of this. Looks lovely jubbly. Does it look lovely? I don't really like that there's like this random ass blue line. Let us take a better screenshot of our file explorer with everything expanded, and let us drag that as a screenshot. Okay, so what could you see with VS Code's file explorer? Using VS Code's file explorer, we could see at a glance. I think that's honestly the key thing, the fact that it's just at a glance like this. A tree, I think someone mentioned a tree diagram. That was such a nice file tree. We could see at a glance a file tree of all the subfolders and files that make up the Network Web project folder for our Java web app. What are the SRC, the source, and the web app folders? All right, so 2 of the project folders created by Maven are SRC and web app, which, we needed to read this to understand it. So there's source that contains all the source code, and inside that it's also split up further into 2. So you have resources, which kind of sets up configuration files. So things like if you have a connection to a database, what are the connection details to that database? Okay, whereas web app is really defining how your web app looks and feels. What is the user actually seeing in front of them? This web app folder will include all the files for that. Okay, so Two of the project folders created by Maven are SRC and web app. SRC contains all of the web app's source code. I.e. the code that defines the web app's look and feel, whereas web app is a subfolder of SRC, and I would say it is a subfolder with files that define whereas web app is a subfolder of SRC that focuses on what the user would see. Okay, this is kind of how I would explain the web app folder inside SRC, inside the source code folder. And we'll click done to submit that. Okay, we're almost done now. This is the very, very final thing we're gonna do in this project, is we're gonna start exploring the power of an IDE by trying to edit something. Okay, imagine if you're using your terminal. We've explored how to use a terminal to move around, to change directories, to navigate, to change permissions of something. But imagine having to edit the content of a file using the terminal. There is actually a way to do that. One of the easiest ways is to use something called nano. So you can run a command called nano, and then you add the file name, and it opens up this little window that you can use to edit the files. But you can't really click around in that window. You have to navigate with your keyboard. You can't really multi-select to delete and paste en masse. Like there are a lot of limitations with trying to edit files inside the terminal. So now that you have an IDE, you don't have to use the terminal anymore to edit your files. You can now use Visual Studio Code to do it. So we're going to edit index.jsp. We're going to click on index.jsp. Look at that. You already have this editor space that is so visual, so easy to use for you to edit the content inside. So let us copy the code that's been provided for us, and let's paste that into index.jsp and replace the your name thing with your actual name. All right? And just like that, you've easily just edited a file inside your web app. That was so easy, and made possible and made this easy because of our connection between VS Code and the EC2 instance. Awesome. And I've just done it like instinctively, but okay, notice how when I pasted something, that there was this little white circle next to index.jsp. So when you see that white circle, it basically means that there are some new changes that haven't been saved yet. So you will have to save your changes by pressing Command or Control S on your keyboard, and then you're done. You've saved your work. So easy. Okay. We're gonna take a screenshot of index.jsp now, like this. Cool. Let us upload that photo. Nice. Okay, so we've taken that photo. I'm gonna upload that here. And what is index.jsp? Index.jsp is a file within the web app folder, and it defines the look of a Java web app. A cool little note for you to know is that because it's index.jsp, it's not some other like HTML file, what that means is you can actually inject code that makes your web app more interactive, whereas HTML has its own limitations when it comes to like adding interactivity or flexibility in the website. Usually HTML files means that everyone sees the same thing, whereas index.jsp is something that gives you a lot more flexibility to create all different kinds of web apps that have interactivity in it. And that's the reason why, things like social media probably are like they're web apps instead of static apps, because every time you scroll, every time you reload something, you're seeing something fresh. Like there's a lot of, it's a very dynamic website. And being able to use index.jsp helps make that possible. Okay. I am amiss. Great question. You've asked, hey Nat, what app are you using to take the screenshot? I'm actually just using the Mac's built-in screenshot taker, and I love keyboard shortcuts. I'm a big fan of keyboard shortcuts. So I've just set up this little shortcut that helps us automatically take a screenshot of a small portion of the screen. Cool. And we also have Sujan saying, I'm stuck in a project. Please help. Yeah, the best place to ask a question is to use the community and the I Have a Question channel. I would recommend that you send that question in there. And it would be awesome if we can stay in touch over that channel instead. I'm just very, very conscious that this chat window is going to close very soon because we're about to wrap up this project. Otherwise, it would have been great to chat about how you're stuck. So thank you so much, Sujan, for being here, and hopefully we can touch base again when we talk about how you're being stuck right now in the DevOps project. Funny that you're here at this time, because we're actually working on a DevOps project right now. We're working on the revamped version. Okay. Anyway, all that just to move on to the last question. How did you edit index.jsp? I edited index.jsp by using VSCode. Even though index.jsp is stored remotely in my EC2 instance, because I've set up a remote SSH connection. Thank you, Praneeth, for saying ask here. Thank you, Praneeth. Praneeth to the rescue. I really appreciate it. Because I've set up a remote SSH connection between VSCode and my EC2 instance. Even though index.jsp is stored remotely in my EC2 instance, because I've set up a remote SSH connection between VSCode and the instance, because we've set up a remote SSH connection between VSCode and the instance, we can use VSCode like a local IDE for our instance. I'm not a very big fan of my wording here. I have to say that out loud now. I have a feeling the way I've explained this is a little bit wordy. It's a little bit repetitive, but really the essence is, we edited index.jsp because there was a connection set up between VSCode and our EC2 instance. And that connection means we can use VSCode like a local IDE on that remote server. And that's the reason why we could edit index.jsp so easily. Done. All right, nice work. You've just learned how to set up a web app on an EC2 instance. That's true. And you also connected it with VS Code, which is one of the most popular and practical IDEs out there. That's also true. So you'll be building on the foundation that we've just set up together over the rest of the DevOps series. So more exciting learnings are ahead. In the meantime, it was such a joy to learn all of these concepts with you today. Those were quite a few hefty steps just to get us towards having an EC2 instance with a web app files inside and being able to edit them through an IDE like VS Code. But I have to say, the setup stuff that you've done today, you can do a lot quicker in the next project. And also, it's very, very versatile. If this was your first time using VS Code, I bet top dollar that it won't be your last time using VS Code because it's just so powerful as a tool. I am a mist in the chat agrees. Okay, before you go, please make sure you delete your resources so that your AWS account is clean of any potential charges. All right, so let us click into for your instance. Make sure it's selected in your AWS Management Console. Select Actions, and then, you can select Instance State, and you can terminate your instance. Okay, click Terminate, delete the instance to delete it right away. Gone. VS Code is free, so once it's installed, keep it there because you're going to use it again in the next project, in the next few projects. Thank you so much to everyone in the chat as well saying many thanks, Nat. Awesome teaching. Thank you so much for the little medals as well. Mariana says thank you so much too. Thank you, everyone. And while I have your attention, let's quickly talk about the key pair as well. Okay, so the key pair is something that is free to keep because it's free to have key pairs. But the reason for deleting it will be for security reasons, so that no one could ever intercept your key pair and use that to access your EC2 instances or anything else that's attached to your account. So you can delete it. The recommendation is to delete it if you're not going to use your key pair ever again. And also if you're not planning on doing the rest of the series. But if you are planning on doing the rest of the series and you're planning on doing the next one in maybe just a couple of days, it is honestly a time saver to just have the same key pair and use that for the rest of the series. All right, just make sure that you are deleting it if you don't actually need it. Keep it if you do. So I'm going to be keeping mine since I'll be using this key pair for the rest of the series. But actually, no, I feel like I have the responsibility to demo how to delete this actually to anyone that might need to delete it. You would select your key pair, you would select the drop down that says Actions, okay, and press delete here to delete it over. And let us type in delete in the field and then press that beautiful orange delete button, and then it's gone. Your key pair's gone just like that. Thank you so much to everyone in the chat as well. Really appreciate it. Joe says, thanks for the vibes, Joe. Great break from my work I have to do. I swear every single time that feeling is mutual, man. Like having you here makes doing this demo also so much fun, Joe. So I hope to see you again next week as well, Joe. And we also have Mariana saying, you are a great teacher, with a love heart. Thank you so much, Mariana. That truly means a lot. It really, really does. To have you here and to have, all of your love for these kinds of sessions really keeps us going. If there's any way we can honestly do better, did you think this live was a bit too long? Did you think maybe some definitions could have been shorter? Always never hesitate to give us that feedback. All right, so Erwin says bye. Erwin's about to hop off now. Thanks so much, Erwin, for being here. And for anyone else that still has another 5 minutes, we'll stay on to just make it to the very end of this project where you can see your documentation. Thank you so much, Praneeth, for saying, always thanks, Nat, for your project demo. Thank you, Praneeth, for being a huge rock in the community and being a big reason why so many community members have so much support, in the community. Surjan says, do you guys give any AWS coupons for cloud certs? No, we don't, Surjan, but it is something that could be great in the long-term future when we're in the place to offer that to students. Yeah, I think that's going to be an awesome day, when students who learn with Nextwork and have proven their experience and have proven that they've learned with hands-on projects also feel rewarded for doing that too. And Mariana says, I've enjoyed, thanks. It was well worth it, Nat. I am amazed. Thank you so much. All right, so we've just finished another AWS project, so let us quickly recap what we've done today. What is VS Code and why is it useful? All right, VS Code is not an AWS service, but it is a key part in today's project, as we use it to connect with our EC2 instance and set up a Java web app. As we use it to connect with our EC2 instance, run the commands for installing tools like Maven and Java, and actually set up the web app itself. How did you use VS Code? I think I just double answered again. I just double answered again. Okay, all right. So we'll just quickly mention that here. VS Code is a key part in today's project as we use it to connect with our EC2 instance, run the commands for installing tools, and to set up that Java web app. All right. Before then, let us fix our definition for VS Code. So VS Code is not an AWS service, but it is an incredibly versatile and popular IDE, i.e. a tool for creating, editing, managing software. All right. Ooh. All right, next thing. What is one thing you didn't expect in this project? One thing we didn't expect? What's something we didn't expect? One thing we didn't expect was having to download remote SSH, maybe? One thing we didn't expect was the ability to use VS Code like a local IDE for a remote server. You know, downloading remote SSH is a game changer. Thank you so much to everyone in the chat saying I've enjoyed, thanks, and TechNet saying thanks, Natasha. Thank you so much. Final two questions. How much time did this project take you? This project took us 2.5 hours, but this includes, I would say, 1.5 hours of explanation and demo time. I love everyone in this demo. Thank you so much. It's been so much fun. Thanks for doing this project. Why did you do this project today? Did this project meet your goals? Yeah, if you've done a Nextwork project before, you'll notice that this is a bit more of a new question that we're asking, and I'm personally very, very excited to see what everyone says. Why did you do this project today? We did this project today. Oh, actually, please, before you check out this answer, because I'm writing just a dummy one, a default one, please give it your best shot, like your personal answer, your personal response on why you did this project today. And while you do that, I'm going to just call out Abang saying I feel more confident following Nextwork projects, even though I'm already certified. It's a gem channel I found through TikTok accidentally. So cool. Did we just show up on your feed while you were scrolling? That's so cool. That's really, really cool. Thank you, Abang, and same to you. It is a gem to us that TikTok helped us find someone like you that's now in a YouTube live and hanging out and being a part of the community. Thank you so much, TikTok. Joe says 2 hours? Didn't feel that long. Honestly, this is why I get roasted for having such long YouTube lives. I have had people say like, Nat, your YouTube lives are like a little long. These projects should be, you should be able to complete them in 1 hour. And I'm like, actually, that's so fair. But the reason I swear why it takes like 2 hours or longer is I would say the process of like really understanding things and processing things takes its own time. And honestly, I love that in our YouTube lives and these like live sessions, we like to have our fun, and we like to discuss and we like to suggest things, and I think it's the reason why they have such a special energy. So thank you everyone for being a part of it. So we did today's project. to challenge ourselves on a revamped version of an AWS DevOps CI/CD pipeline project series. Completing the first project in this series was fun. And met our goals, I would say. Joe saying, nah, if it was just 45 minutes to 1 hour, it would not be fun at all. Is that true, Joe? But if there's anyone that truly would like to see a shorter version of these live project demos, let us know in the comment, let us know in a DM, let us know wherever you're comfortable with sharing that kind of feedback. I am amazed your laugh faces. Amazing. Thank you so much. Okay, we are now ready to see our documentation. So let us click on mission accomplished. Congratulations. And let that documentation generate. While it's generating, here is a bit of details about how you've just completed part 1 of the CI/CD pipeline. Here's a recap of what you've learned. You set up an IAM user, you did that in the first step. You would have set up VSCode, installed tools like Maven and Java, and honestly, a powerful part of this is the fact that you have created an application and that you've actually connected VSCode to EC2 to use it like a local IDE. I still think that's my favorite part, that very last step. And yeah, that was so satisfying, wasn't it? It's very, very satisfying to be able to do something that's so practical, in my opinion, because I can see so many different use cases, of having an EC2 instance and then needing to connect to it securely using SSH. And then from there, once you've connected to it securely, how are you going to easily manage all of the coding projects and all of the files that you have in your EC2 instance? You've learned a lot of good skills, that will solve problems like that. So in the next project, we're going to kick things up a notch by setting up something called a GitHub repository. Man, if you thought VS Code is the biggest kind of tool that developers use, I think GitHub is going to give it a run for its money. I don't know which one's more used actually in the world. Do you think more people use GitHub or more people use VS Code? I would say both of them are just such incredibly popular, powerful tools. It's going to be hard to decide. So GitHub is what we're going to be using next to do something called setting up a repository or a Git repository, and it's going to save a copy of your web app's code somewhere safe. And it also does a few powerful things, once you save it into GitHub. We'll explore more of that in the next project. In the meantime, we're just going to see if we can download our documentation. Yes, we can. And we should be able to open it too. Shall we see it? Yeah, is the documentation looking mighty fine? It kind of is. This looks amazing. I think, it's nice. You can see the title of your project, what you've done today. Your name is here. And if you see that it's your email instead, that will be because at the moment, our document generator will extract your email if you're not connected to nextweek.org using your Google account. So log in through Google if you want to generate a document that has your name on it, not your email address. But yes, you can even see your screenshots are here. All of the submissions you've made to all of the questions are here. And you can see my little typo. But you can see all of your responses, all of your screenshots, all laid out together with headings. They're all organized, so it all really flows nicely, like a story, like you're telling a story about your project. And we hope you enjoy. We hope you enjoy having this piece of documentation as almost like a memento for your project that you can show to employers, that you can post on LinkedIn. Let us actually share it on LinkedIn now to see how it works. So you would click on that. Whoa, something happened there. Now let's click on this link, the share on LinkedIn link, and it's going to take you to this page that lets you view a LinkedIn post. And this LinkedIn post is something that's generated that's tailored to this specific project too. Awesome. Find the function. Thank you for the encouragement. It's great to take the time and have a discussion. Lots of tutorials run through to hit a specific time, and so much gets lost. I appreciate that so much. Thank you. Joseph's GitHub is super useful. I don't have a portfolio page, so I do use it to showcase work. Christian says, good morning. The recording of this live will be available. It sure will be, Christian. The moment this live finishes, you will be able to find the recording straight away in our YouTube channel. All you have to do is hit the streams link, the streams tab in our YouTube channel, and you can find all of our past recordings too, for all of our other project demos. But as you can see, there's a pre-written or like a pre-filled kind of LinkedIn post that you can use as a template, and then you can even tag Nextwork like this. Please do this actually. It helps us with seeing everyone that has created documentation with Nextwork, so we can come and cheer for you as well in the comments. Click on this little X button here, and then click on the plus more button to add a document, and we're gonna add the document that we've downloaded. So it should be in your downloads folder. All right, and you can upload it straight away. So once you upload it, you can even add a title. So you can say your name, DevOps series, VSCode, something like that. And we can press post, and off it goes into the world. Off it goes into the world. And then the world will get to see your awesome work. All right. If this preview is blurry, just know that the actual PDF itself will be clear. It's just that sometimes the preview in LinkedIn can be a little bit blurry, but that's okay. And then you just click post, and then you're done. Finished. All right. Well, let's stay in touch in the community. I know we've just wrapped up this project now, but it was so much fun, and I can't wait to see how everyone finds this project and when everyone posts their documentation as well. It always like makes us just jump with joy when we see that someone's posted documentation for the latest project, because you're like, oh my god, they would have just seen it in the project demo, they would have already just jumped into it. It's so awesome. So our community is right here. You can find us at the community button inside your project. So if you click on this little stuck ask a question button, you can get to the community. And this is where you can ask each other questions, you can share your documentation, you can celebrate your wins, you can introduce yourself. It's a lot of fun. And we do a lot of events as well. We have an event coming up soon called AWS Build Together, where you can just build a project with a fellow student, or you can even watch a guest speaker event on how Daham here has moved into cloud as a software engineer. So all kinds of stuff is happening in the community. I really hope to see you there. And in the meantime, that's a wrap for today's project. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for your energy and your presence. I can't wait to see you in the next live. And yeah, in the meantime, hope you stay well and hope you have the most fun with this project. All right, bye for now. A big shout out to everyone that's been in the chat and keeping it such a lively session. I really can't imagine doing this without you guys. So thank you. All right, bye bye. See ya.